once I found the feminine and coming into the body, so diving into the depth of the body first, the feminine, then moving into the masculine direction and the go energy, things just completely change. But the depth is the embodiment, really connecting to, our desire, our pleasure, our magnetism, our creativity, and our flow, and letting that lead us really rather than our head all the time.
Welcome to Wild Flow, the podcast with me, your host, Charlotte Pointo. I'm a wild feminine cycle coach here for the awakened woman who is ready to reclaim her body, menstrual cycle, and feminine power, and to live, love, and lead in flow with nature's wisdom. In this podcast, I'll share how you can live in sync with your menstrual cycle and life seasons, heal your relationship with your womb and rites of passages, and embody your wild feminine as a multi-passionate woman in life, mothering, and business. It's your time to flourish as a cyclical being in this modern world. Are you ready? Let's flow. I spoke with Ainslie Young, a feminine embodiment and business mentor who's passionate about partnering with female entrepreneurs and showing them how to work smarter, not harder, by combining feminine marketing strategies with their inner body wisdom so they too can create successful and sustainable businesses on their own terms. Ainslie specializes in partnering with other coaches, creatives, and health and wellness practitioners as a part of her high-end feminine business mastermind, where her clients celebrate everything from becoming booked out with dream clients, creating 4-day work weeks that are filled with pleasure, and owning their premium prices because they know their work is valuable. Ainslie can be described as a heart-centered strategist thanks to her university qualifications in psychology and marketing, her life coaching and feminine embodiment certifications, plus her extensive corporate experience in marketing, coupled with her own entrepreneurial adventure across product and service-based businesses. Ainslie and I spoke about how you can really lean into the feminine energetics of business to embody pleasure and rest and the cycles, particularly the menstrual cycle, to amplify your creativity, your productivity, and to flourish in a business without burning out. Ainslie shares some of the tools that she uses in her own business and shares with her own clients. And we talked about what it's like to juggle and balance working in our own businesses with raising children in an overseas country to home as well. I got so much out of this conversation and I hope that you really love it as well. Today we have got Ainslie Young on Wild Flow as a guest. I'm so thankful that you've joined us all the way from Singapore where you are today. While I'm over in Australia, it's really lovely to have you. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm really well. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to chat today.
Yeah, thank you. So I love to begin with a cycle check-in. And so I'd love to ask you whereabouts, either what day or what season or phase of your cycle you're in, and just how that feels to you today.
Yeah. So I am on day 18 and I'm in my autumn, so like that early autumn stage. And I've noticed that I kind of have two phases to my autumn. That first half is actually it's not difficult, but it's more challenging than the second half because I think I find it hard to shift gears because I'd like to stay in the summer with the energy. But I think the more I'm aware of it, the more I'm like, I just have to dance into the autumn and be prepared to, close things down for this cycle. But I'm feeling pretty good. I went back to yoga today. So restrictions have eased here in Singapore and I could go to yoga this morning. So that felt really, really good.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm glad that you got to go to yoga. What a treat. And
such a treat.
Such at this time of your cycle too. I really love what you said about the first part of your autumn feeling more challenging. And so the second part of your autumn feels a bit easier. Does it for you once you've dropped into that?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's dropping in. And I know that, and I can actually, there's that transition with my body too, that it feels like I'm like, I'm like really getting ready for rest now. And also my inner critic is like at its peak when I move into that first phase of autumn, whereas I know it shifts in that second phase, and like the wisdom starts to drop in, and I can really start to feel that sense of grounding down. So I look forward to that part of my phase, that part of that season.
Brilliant. That's so good to hear, because I experienced it the other way. I really love how we all have, such different experiences of our cycle, and the gift that knowing our cycle, what that gives to us is, the self-awareness, the ability to work with it, to give us what we need to check in, and just to know that this is what's true for us. Even if it's not true for other people, perhaps, but the compassion and the way that we can come from that really deep knowing. So for me, I enjoy that first phase into my inner autumn. I kind of feel myself pulling back, and I go, like I still feel like I'm riding high a little bit, and but without the intensity. And so it still feels quite good, and I'm like really thankful for like the foot coming off the gas, if you like.
Yes.
But by the time I get to the end of my autumn, I start to get into it sort of comes out as feeling like questioning, sometimes it comes out as, why am I doing this, or what is it for? Like, I'm am I on the right path? Is this all working? Is this going how I wanted it? Am I at the place where I wanted to be at this time? And sometimes that can come out with, if in my life I'm not feeling particularly supported, I think that's what it is. It can kind of come out as this, like this intense frustration, or like this quite intense energy that feels a bit strong, and I really have to be mindful of it, and check in, and really, really slow right down. It's like it's almost on the cusp of this transition to winter that arrives before my bleed actually does. And it's interesting, this time that manifested a bit differently to how it has done before. The things that were coming through for me weren't, what's the point of it? It was, if I'm doing this, everything that I'm doing, it has to work for me first. It has to be really, this has to really serve me. So that it had shifted from like, feeling disempowered to feeling empowered, I think, and going like, right, so what's this going to need to look like for me? And I just really noticed that. So I'm currently just at the end of my bleed now, and still feeling really slow and kind of tender, and just creeping back out into the world. But really, really happy to be having this conversation with you today, because I just find these conversations really nourishing, and they light me up a lot. And it's just so nice to have a space to talk about cycles and business and womanhood and all the things. But around that, I'm going to take some, real slowness after today. So yeah.
Oh, I really take my hat off you for doing the podcast on your bleed. That's something that I struggle with, and mainly because I'm not articulate at all. That's what I'm worried about. How articulate am I going to be today? Because after summer, it really does drop off, and I become lost for words often. I'm like, a bit spacey.
Yeah, I really relate to that too. I agree. And I think, like before we started recording, we just dropped in, didn't we? We just did some breathing. And for me, it's that just permission to go slowly and to be where I'm at, and know that it's like, I might stumble for words, and I might kind of not be as on fire as I would be. But I really love trying to honor those differences. And to share how, because life doesn't stop. We still have to, it'd be so beautiful if we could all just schedule off like our whole bleed time, and, and have that. But, let alone the fact we've got kids, but even just as, working people, it's not easy to do that. So my challenge is always like, what can we do around that, you know, if we're showing up. And for me, it's really been about, we've just gone into lockdown as well. And, you know, apparently it's for a week, but I feel like, you know, these things, there's every chance it could go for longer. So I thought, well, I could postpone. I could, you know, I know that you would be absolutely understanding and let us move this. But I thought, well, I've got this pocket of time when my family's out the house, they've given us the space, because otherwise I'd have 3 kids banging on the door going, Mom.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah. And I thought, well, let's just work with what we've got. Let's just
I love
do
that.
this in a way that feels right.
Yeah, and I think it's also changing the mindset of things having to be either or to and. Like, you can be bleeding and you can do a podcast and it be amazing and be okay with where it's at. Like, you can be running a business successfully and with pleasure whilst being in lockdown. Like, it doesn't have to be either or. And I find that that's like a big shift that I've made with like everything in my business, where you feel like you have to miss out or compartmentalize things. But, you know, you can kind of have it all, and just being okay with where you're at. And I think, the whole cyclic living and like running your business, it ties in so nicely to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love that. And instead of or, I'm going to remember that one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, we've got heaps in common. We're both women, mothers, coaches as well, business owners, and we're both also living overseas away from family. And I was just really thinking about that. Like, one of the things that I struggle most with is I don't really like the word balance. I feel like, you know, balance sort of implies equal split as well. And, you know, it being like a binary, like this or that, like what you were saying, you know, you can have this or you can have that. And for me, it's like, you know, when you have the work-life balance, there's work and there's life, and like, where do you come into that? And, you know, but really it's this sense of, you know, trying to, you know, live your life, look after yourself, raise a child, children, a family, and run and work in a business that you really love and you're really passionate about, and you're working with beautiful clients that you love to work with. But it can be really hard when you are away from family, when you're trying to do, you know, a lot of things, you know, by yourself as well.
Yes.
And I just would really love, I just really felt called to ask you, like, how's that for you? What's your dynamic like, and how do you show up for, you know, your daughter, your family, your business, you know, and yourself in a way that feels nourishing and, you know, some sort of balance, whatever that might be for you? Like, what's that like for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And also coming from a person living abroad as well, like, we're in very similar situations, like you said. So for me, I didn't come into like this feminine embodiment work and looking at life and business and everything through a cyclic lens until I had my daughter. I kind of dabbled around the edges whilst I was pregnant, because I had some friends in Hong Kong, so I previously lived in Hong Kong, who were into like feminine embodiment work. And whilst I was pregnant, I actually did a menstrual cycle awareness workshop with one of my friends, who's actually now one of my clients. So this was like a light bulb moment. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to have my baby so then I can get my period back and be able to like use this cyclic power. But like typical Ainslie, I was, you know, very type A, very masculine. And I had my daughter. So I actually flew back to Australia to have her. And when she was 7 weeks old, I flew back to Hong Kong. And my husband was always traveling for business. And, you know, I was essentially alone. And I had this idea that I could run my business 24/7 and like, you know, keep it going. Like, why I thought I could, you know, continue to run a business at that period of time, and look after my daughter Xanthi 24/7 with no help. And I did for a year until like I completely burned out, like rock bottom. And I went to the doctor. So like local Cantonese doctor, and her recommendation was you need to get a helper, which is like a domestic helper, so like somebody who comes and like lives with you, which is very common, particularly in Asia. You have foreign domestic help. And I did end up, I relented, and I had a lady come 3 days a week to help look after Xanth and help at the house. And it was amazing. Like, oh, just the release and like being able to lean into support. And then we moved to Singapore, and it just wasn't possible. Like, I didn't actually want somebody to live with us. And so I went back to, caring for Xanthi, being by myself, setting up in a new country again, James going away, and I burnt out. But then I was like, Xanthi's going into preschool, and things changed again. But I've always had this boundary of I only work 3 days a week, and that it like Xanthi has to be cared for. So there's a split, and I've got time to work on my business. And even on those days that I'm, she's at preschool, I'll do things for me as well. But I'm very, very fierce with my business boundaries. Those 3 days are the only days I work, the only days I reply to clients. And that is what resources me, I guess, and allows me to have the capacity to do everything else in my life. Because I think so many women feel like they are their business, and they don't see themselves as a separate entity, and it becomes all consuming and they burn out. And like, we need to have this separation that we are not the ones fueling our business all the time. It's separate, and we also have to let our business nourish us rather than the other way around all the time. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I mean, in the last 2 years, the more embodiment work I've done, the more pleasure has fueled my productivity, fueled my prosperity, and things are A-okay. In saying that, I really would love to be around my family more. I haven't seen them since January last year, thanks to COVID. But yeah, I just kind of make do with the friends that we've got here. My husband is really great, and I just lean on as much support as I can. I don't want to be superwoman. I'm done with that. It didn't work for me.
Amen. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I really hear you. I love that. I love that you said, there were a few things in there that I love that you said. You said about having boundaries that really keep you as being a separate being from your business, and so that you're not slipping into it, that being just an extension of you, and how that really supports you to be present for yourself and for Xanthi. And I think that's something that, I certainly have experienced, is that, particularly in the early days of growing a business and, with young children, time in my business, and because it's something that I absolutely love, and I know you do too. And, when you have a business that's really heart-led and soulful, and it can feel really nourishing to be in your business too. And it can be such a nice escape almost as well from those moments of like intense, immersive mothering. For me, it was, and it has been. And it's this kind of, I can carve out this sacred place for me within my work.
Yes.
And that can be good. And that can also lead to burnout as well. Mm-hmm. It can be good because it can be something that gives me a sense of being more multidimensional as a woman, and turning my experience and my passions and my journey into a purpose. But giving away so much, I think, especially in the mother season of life as well, when we are just energetically at that place of giving and creating.
Yes.
And I love, that you've brought boundaries up straight away as being something that's really important, because I completely agree. And it's something that I'm still dancing with. And sometimes I feel like my boundaries just are a bit too thin, and I have to really pull it back, to honor me and where I'm at in this season of life and business. And to keep it something that resources me and doesn't drain on me. Yeah.
And I think it's important to not acknowledge the season of your life and the season of your business, because often they can be very similar or quite different. And I realized that I'm in the season of life, as you said, of mothering. Like Xanthi only has one more year until she goes to school, like full time. And I'm just going to make the most of it. Like I'm going to realize that 3 days a week is all I can commit to, and that is fine. But then I was like, it's not the either or. It's not like, oh, well, my business can't grow. I was like, I can work 3 days and my business can thrive. And it has. Like once I made that shift, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to stay small just because I work 3 days a week. Because now I'm thinking maybe I will just work 3 days a week next year when she goes to school.
I was going to ask, is your plan then to keep that, because it feels like a perfect
it
for
does.
you? Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, you call yourself a feminine business mentor, as well as an embodiment coach. But what does it mean to you to embody the feminine in life and business? And how does it differ to masculine business energetics? Because you mentioned that embodiment was something that really brought you, you said since that point, everything's been a-okay. Like what's that? What has it brought you, and what does it mean and look like?
Yeah. Dropping into the feminine, in both personally and professionally, has given me so much depth. It's given me a sense of like relief that I don't have to continually be on this linear trajectory of expansion and growth, like, because everything is cyclic. And it's brought so much more richness and potency to my work and my life, and deeper connections. Like, so I'm really, from like a business point of view, in terms of how I run my business now and what I share with my clients, I come from a psychology background. I've got an honours degree in psychology, and I've got a master's in marketing, and I'm super analytical, great at planning things out, very driven and focused, but that was exhausting to me and also a bit boring. And once I found the feminine and coming into the body, so diving into the depth of the body first, the feminine, then moving into the masculine direction and the go energy, things just completely changed. And like, so the masculine work for me is like the feminine marketing strategies and all of that kind of work, the analytic, the mindset work. But the depth is the embodiment, really connecting to, our desire, our pleasure, our magnetism, our creativity, and our flow, and letting that lead us really, rather than our head all the time. And that's in both life and business.
Yeah. So are you saying like there's a place for like marketing and business strategy, but really instead of leading from what you should do, you're coming from a place of what feels right in your body first, and then letting that lead?
Because what I find, so many of my clients, they come to me and they're like, Ainslie, I tried this strategy, I followed it to a T. It just didn't feel good to me and it didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, because like you haven't dropped into your body of like why it doesn't feel good. So maybe you've had some past bad experience with some type of launch framework. Well, that needs to be cleared from your body, like, from an embodiment point of view, rather than, trying to say some affirmations and work on your mindset. So this is something like I talk about the toxic masculine marketing cycle, where we can pinpoint in there, like within our nervous system, where we can actually break the cycle. And because we're told that, for example, say like, I'm this marketing guru and I say to you, Charlotte, okay, you need to launch. This is how you should launch. And you're like, that just doesn't feel good to me, but I'm going to do it anyway because Ainsley knows what she's talking about. You do it and fails, you feel like crap. And then, the thing is, well, Charlotte, you just need to like tweak this with the strategy and work on your mindset and go again. And then the cycle keeps continuing and continuing until you burn out or you give up. But if you come at it from the point of like, well, how does this actually feel in my body? What needs to be released, or what do I need to expand into? And also your capacity, like, do you have the capacity to launch right now? Where are you in your menstrual cycle? But coming from a place of like your desire and what it is you want and the energy behind it, that's where you have successful launches and create successful businesses that are sustainable and pleasurable. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense to me. And I love that so much. It's like power over or power what's the opposite of power over? I always forget that expression, you know, like power over is being like, you know, where you're looking outside of yourself for the answers, for the
Exactly.
expertise,
Yeah.
and like, this is how you do it, rather than trusting yourself and your body's wisdom. And the fact that you know what feels right to you and whether this is the right time, and if you want to do it that way, is it really an integrity with you? Making such a difference. And I've lived that, like I've done that.
Yeah.
I, you know, shared a launch, the first Moon Circle facilitator training. The first time I did that, it wasn't the first time actually. The first time was, I was just like, is this a thing? Is anyone even interested? And so I came at it with no expectation and just shared this thing, and it was just fun. It was just pure fun, because it was leading from just being open to seeing what was possible. But the second time I launched it, I was like, well, now I've got to set an expectation about what this should be like and what's possible and what I'm kind of aiming for. And I gave myself like a short, sharp time, and kind of it just felt really intense. And, you know, I'd aligned it with, like with, you know, the seasons and the cycles like outwards. But at the time I didn't have my menstrual cycle, so I was working with the moon. But when it actually came to doing it, because I'd been mapping it out for a long time, and I actually came to it, and I was like, oh, I just didn't feel like I had the energy and the capacity, like you're saying, to do it. And it felt like a real kind of uphill battle. Whereas more recently I've just kind of opened it up to, instead of being like a short, sharp thing, I've just kind of gone, well, it's there, you know, you can enroll any time. And, you know, there's strategies, and there'll be marketing gurus who tell you that that's not the right way and all the rest. But for me, it was about what feels most fun and pleasurable, and what feels supported as well. Like I don't have to do it all myself and pour all of myself in sharp bursts. And so I feel like that, you know, could be an example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to have, like the way I say I partner with my clients, like, you know, it's a partnership, and I want to meet them where they're at and really work to their strengths, but also work out what is potentially, you know, holding them back, because often there's things that they have to clear. But it's like, we need the healthy masculine. We do need some type of, you know, container timeline, and there's a whole heap of different strategies we can use. But that's why I don't actually ever teach strategies like outside of my one-on-one clients, because everyone's different. Like you compared to somebody else and somebody else, like I want to meet you at the depth of your body, know what's going on, what your desires are, and say, hey, like here's a smorgasbord of different things you could try. What would actually feel good? What feels exciting? And then let's customize that, because there's always things in a strategy that will work versus won't work. Like it is an art and a science, like the whole business thing. But rather than just, you know, leading blindly and saying, you know, X told me to do this, I'm going to do it. Like you really have to feel it. It's that energy piece is so critical. And going back to what you're saying about, you know, that first launch, which went really well versus the one that was a bit more contrived, like 80%, like the success formula is like 80% calibrating your body for success. It's in the depth, the embodiment, and 20% of the doing. Like if you can just spend more time really working on your energy and feeling good about what it is, the less doing you have to do and the more successful it will be.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So spending time being in your body and feeling like supporting yourself, your energy, and creating, like, it's not about, you know, increasing your capacity, like your, you know, to do more. You're not looking after yourself to then go and do more. It's like looking after yourself and really tuning in with what feels right. And, you know, creating that, you know, like you might call it like magnetism almost.
Magnetism, absolutely.
Is that what you would, tell us about that.
Being in, so, you know, we hear about the law of attraction and manifesting, which is often more like through the brain logical, whereas magnetism is a felt sense in your body, whereas like your heart is actually the most magnetic part of your body. And like there's the Heart Math Institute, which has got all of these scientific research around the actual magnetic field of your heart and your body. So it's about kind of, from a scientific point of view, unraveling your nervous system so you can get it into a state of being open to receive pleasure and feel that throughout your body, and then magnetize your desires so that your energy essentially is on the wavelength, the frequency of what it is that you desire. And that's when you hear people talk about the quantum, where you can collapse time frames and using your body essentially to magnetize, what it is that you're wanting to happen in the 3D world. And like that's what I share with my clients, and they're kind of blown away by what they can achieve by doing that. As well as the doing, but not focusing so much on the doing, because we always think like, well, it's not working, I've got to do more, I've got to give more, like what else can I do, rather than like, okay, what is it within my body that I need to do, what do I need to calibrate in terms of like the offer. Your offer might not be right, and you've got to change that cyclically in your body, like you might not be open to receive, all different things. But that's like, to me, this is like the super exciting part of business, this depth and using your body to magnetize your desires. And then the strategy piece is always nice because it's like puzzle pieces coming together.
Yeah. I feel really excited by the way that you're describing that. And I really feel that too. It's like, this is where the fun is. This is like where the, you creating something that feels really alive and exciting for you, and then being able to share that, and that being really felt, people can feel it.
Yeah, it's the resonance.
Yeah. And your point about us needing the masculine, like the container, we do, like we need that to hold us and to guide us and to shape us and to let us be that feminine softness, to like flop and splash within it. But again, like not tipping into, like having that as like the healthy container, like the healthy, it's there to support, it's not there to take over.
Yeah, exactly. And I find too, with a lot of clients, it's kind of like a trauma response. They can swing from one side to the other, from like being super in their feminine and then like super in their masculine. And often like the women who are like really in their feminine now, it's because they've like burned out in the like ultra toxic masculine way that we seem to live our lives, which is understandable. But you do need to come back into some type of a balance, because otherwise when we're hanging out in the feminine, we don't get shit done. We just don't. Like, oh, everything's so lovely and magical, but I don't actually really want to do anything.
And I love that space, but it's not helpful all the time.
Totally.
So something that you mentioned in there as well was about being in the doing, and about the toxic masculine, like the patriarchal culture that we live in. And a lot of women who I work with, when we start talking, it's I hear a lot about this sense of needing to prove themselves worthy and successful, and to themselves as like an internalized measure of success, or like this pressure. But it really comes from outwards. And like as a woman who's multi-passionate, whether she's got her own business and whether she's got children or not, and is looking after self and all the other things that she's interested in, there's such a lot of pressure to is stepping out of perhaps an employed role, whilst mothering, having this time and the investment energetically, financially, time that needs to be put into that first season of, or the early seasons of business. There's this real pressure that it keeps coming up over and over again to prove that that's okay and that it's worthy, and they don't have to. It's like this pressure to earn certain money or to bring in certain numbers of clients to like justify being in this business. And for me, it's like it comes back to, like I say, those patriarchal measures of success and worthiness, but it's doing a lot of harm. So I'd love to ask, like, in your journey and with the clients that you work with, how do you encourage women to honor that and to sit with that? Is it through a cyclical approach, or is it like, how do you build worthiness in that?
Yeah, that's a
experience?
Really great question. I actually came up with these feminine metrics of success. So this was like early last year, and I'd had a successful launch in the fact that, like, from a monetary point of view, it was successful. Like, it wasn't like uber amazing, but I felt good. But I realized there was all this depth. Like, it felt amazing. And I was trying to tell my mum, but like my mum just wants to know the dollars and the cents, how many clients or how much did that make? And I was like, there's so much more to how I'm feeling and to me how impactful this launch was for me personally and the audience. And then I kind of stepped away and I'm like, all right, what are these other things? And they were like things like connection to myself, like how connected I was to my body throughout the whole launch experience, how connected I was to my audience and to my message and my mission. And then, like, what was the impact of the launch? Like, how many people did I help from a place of service and it was free? My visibility, like, how did that expand again and having the ripple effect? Was my launch or was my business creating a community? Was it equitable? Was there diversity? Was I being inclusive? Like, all these different things that are not, clapped upon from like the patriarchy, that they couldn't give two hoots about. But to me, I could feel all of things. And also, of course, how pleasurable was it? It was so pleasurable. I loved the whole experience. And just using these different metrics, like, and I build them into when we're doing like our quarterly business planning and reflection with my clients, like also looking at that. We're looking at the revenue and the stats, etc., but these things as well, because I feel like these are really great foundation blocks that help build your growth, and it feels good. Because if we're just focusing on those metrics, particularly early on, it can be very, very deflating, although the numbers are very key to get clarity. But this helps build worth because you actually can see in other different ways, shapes or forms or through a different lens that you are contributing, you are having an impact despite the revenue at this point in time, and it feels good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I love that. I think it's such a it's such an antidote to capitalism, and it's got to be all about output and money, and it's really damaging that this gets placed upon us, especially at a time when we need to be encouraged to, do what, create these heart-led businesses, because this is, it's such a contribution to, not only us and our families, but, our communities and the ripple effect out into the world. And, to be supported as a woman who, can have children and have a business, and in times like this of COVID and lockdown, like just how much harder it all is.
Yes.
These days we can do anything and we can be anything.
Yes.
But that pressure is gone from, as women have had rights over the years, now we are kind of expected to do everything and be everything. We can, so we should, but that's actually just not helpful, and it's smothering. So I feel like, those metrics are really powerful, really amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just like, yep, 100%. I really feel that.
Yeah. And also just valuing motherhood as well, and like our contribution through our mothering. Like, that was something that I never, ever really considered until the embodiment work. And I was like, yes, well, I might not be making X amount of dollars and contributing equally to my husband, but who's doing all the work? Who's raising our little being? There's so much value in that, that society doesn't necessarily value themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, because you're so right. And, so for us to be doing paid work and unpaid work and caring, and it's massive. It's a massive load. And then to have this added pressure of performing and succeeding in these very patriarchal ways it's a lot. So I really love what you've said about bringing pleasure in and inviting pleasure in. And I was raised and by people who, parents who worked and had businesses, and around me, my whole life has been people who have businesses or been employed, like, all of us, everyone around us is most people are working. But what I've always heard by most of these people is, you know, how hard it is to work. Like, work is hard. Like, it's so hard. Like, I've got to go to work. I've got to work hard. You know, it's always coming back to it being hard, which, you know, this idea of pleasure is like a, you know, massively rebellious and like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, like the idea of like having pleasure in work is probably a bit of a like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But the power of doing that and leaning into that, like, what's that look like for you? Like, how's that been for you? And how do you lean into pleasure in your business?
Yeah, really good question. You've got really great questions, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Well, I think like where it really came from was I saw my dad, who was in, he worked for like a mining company, and he was in like the same role for so long and got paid very well, but he hated his job, like, and it made him miserable. And when I first started working, when I left uni, I was like, I realized, like, you spend so much time at work. Like, why do you want to spend so much time at work and be miserable? I'm like, what is the point of this? And then when I had my own business, and you know, you always think the grass is always greener, and you go into business and you're like, oh, this actually is quite demanding. There are a lot of things to do. But I was like, no, like, I want to shift this. But for me, like, again, the pleasure thing came when I really dived into the feminine embodiment work. But like, pleasure is, again, a felt state. So lots of people, you know, associate it with sex, but you know, as we know, it's a felt state, and it comes down to our senses. So it's this sense of sensual aliveness and bringing in our 5 different senses, as well as feeling it internally. And so just practically for me, I always make sure my work environment is activating my senses, whether I've got like a candle, if I've got something lovely to drink, I'm in a really lovely environment, might be listening to music, but also like I do a lot of movement practices, embodied movement practice, to feel the pleasure in my body and let that fuel me. So if anything's feeling not pleasurable as I'm doing it, like, okay, I need to stop. Like, I need to shake out this tension that's in my body, and I need to come back and find some pocket of pleasure, and letting my business nourish me. Like, so like I talk about pleasure non-negotiables in the week, and they're things you have to plan out first rather than like your to-dos, and they have to be booked in. So and I do it depending on my cycle. So, you know, say if I'm in my summer and I feel quite social, I'll be booking in things with my friends, like social activities or whatever. Whereas if I'm in my winter, it might be like just laying on my bed for 2 hours in the afternoon while I'm working, like reading a book or something like that. But they have to be locked in and prioritized, because that's what helps you get through the week. That's what helps get your stuff done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I love that. Like, completely flipping. Instead of going like, what's the non-negotiable work task, you know, and you know, people talk about, I can't remember what the expression is, but getting the really like the things that you least want to do.
Yeah, they call like eating the frog or something.
That's the one. Yeah, doing that in the morning and like just getting it done, you know, and then having that sense of like, well, I've done it now, but like that's not pleasurable. That's confronting, and then that's something that you're leading from that place of like discomfort, or it being out of alignment or out of integrity with
exactly,
you know, what feels good. And you know, why are you doing something that doesn't feel good to you anyway? Is it just a task that you're not good at?
Yeah.
You know, or is it because you're doing something in a way that doesn't suit? And you know, there are ways around both of those.
That's right. And it's the productivity piece of like, well, if I've ticked off 5 things today, I'm worthy. Like, I've been successful.
I've done my job today.
Yeah. But then if it hasn't come from a place of alignment, a place of feeling good and pleasurable, like the energy behind it. So if you're creating content will probably suck because you've forced yourself to do it. But how could you like change things up a bit to actually be, rather from coming from a place of obligation, coming from a place of devotion? How could it be routine, like switching it from routine to ritualizing it? So there's intention behind it. So all these, you know, it's more of a feminized way of working rather than like the toxic masculine way of working.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just thinking, like, if you imagine if it's like, write this email to somebody and you're coming at it from like a don't want to do this, you know. It's like that's gonna
Yeah,
come across. Because instead
absolutely.
of like dropping into your body, and I try to start my days. So I have 2 days a week with like normally when we're not in lockdown of like nobody
Yeah,
else in the house. I've got
yeah. Oh,
everybody out,
divine.
and it's like and I come to my first day, my first free day, and I can feel myself, my body activating into like adrenaline mode, like, right, let's get shit done
Yes,
time.
yes.
And so I have to counteract that. Like I've learned that the more I feel like that, the more I actually need to buffer that with time dropping into myself, like
Yeah,
either a walk in nature or like moving or breathing or yoga, or journaling or like
yeah,
whatever tool it is, to
yeah,
get into my body before jumping into work. You know, so
yeah.
that can sometimes mean of my extremely precious limited hours, I don't work till midday.
Exactly. And that's where the pleasure piece comes in. A barrier is that it's not productive. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
It's a detour. No, it's like the depth first. This is what my mentor taught me, like depth first, direction second, feminine
Yeah.
first, masculine second. So then you're actually doing, like, the energy is aligned. You're actually probably doing the right task that suits where you're at. And it's like really testament to the cyclic work that you do. Because even like when you're saying about the email, I know that when I'm in my autumn phase, because I'm like, just get stuff done, wrap it up, I can be very blunt. Like, I'm not being mean, but it's just like very short emails. And if I read them back, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like quite bitchy or short. Whereas I'm not. So I've got to be really mindful of like,
Mm.
okay, like I'm in this stage, be a little bit more soft with my emails or
Yeah.
but yeah, like I just think it speaks to the, you have to be aware of your body, aware of your unique cycles, and like use it. It's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the reflection. Like I completely agree. And it's really funny. I was just realizing when you were saying that, I was like, oh, like I hadn't realized that I was putting pleasure first. I was seeing it almost as a way of like, I don't enjoy, yeah, again, it's pleasure. I don't enjoy working from a place of, oh, I've got to get this done. It just
Yeah,
can't, it doesn't come out. And I think so much of it, our work is, it is, I mean, everyone's work, but especially when you're, working in like um, as a coach or a space holder or something like that, where you're supporting people,
yeah,
like, it really comes across the energy that you're in. And
yeah.
so, having that as like having your cyclic energy as like an ally is, um it's like divination almost, or like a buddy in your business who's like working with you. Or
Absolutely.
it can, if you don't have the awareness, it works against you.
Yeah, and that's what I love with my clients in my mastermind. Everything is tied back to our cycles. Like, I'll ask them, well, where are you in your cycle? But they'll say like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious at the moment. I've got this inner critic, because they know where they're at in their cycle. And so it just helps, like it feels super supportive to them, and it helps explain a lot of what's going on for them.
Mm.
So definitely an ally.
Yeah. And so, like you obviously work with your cycle, and it's something you talk about and teach and, guide
Yeah.
other women to do it as well. Um, would you give us a little sneaky peek into what your favorite cyclic either rituals are, like personally or like in business? Like what might you try your best to align with certain phases
Yeah.
of the cycle?
Yeah. Definitely launching. Like, yeah, it has to be aligned with my cycle, because it can be such an energy drain. Like, I'm sure like when you've launched things, depending on what it is and how long the container is. So I always make sure I'm looking at my cycle and knowing that when I'm kind of in sales mode, when I've got to be visible and articulate, I'll try and time it around that ovulation window, because I know I feel good, I look good, etc., etc. But not, it doesn't always work like that. And I mean, my last launch, I think because my period just was a bit out of whack, I had to launch, do a webinar when I had my period. But it was fine, because like you today, like just going to ground in and trust that whatever comes through will come through, and I'm okay with that. But what I really do like to do is, like, I've got a weekly pleasure and productivity planner. So each Sunday night before the Monday kickoff for the week, like, I drop into my body first and I, like, where am I in my cycle? And I use that as my starting point. So I know, like, my energy is going to be great, or this is a great week to create content, etc. And I know and then I'm like, what's my intention? Like, asking my body, like, how do I actually want to feel this week? And then I move into my pleasure non-negotiables, so book those in. And then I move into, like, my 3 most important tasks, so the masculine. So what are those 3 things that are going to really drive the needle forward on my business that are in alignment with how I want to feel and in alignment with my cycle? So I'm not trying to push poo up a hill if they're not aligned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do that every week, and it works beautifully for me. And it's something I share with my client too, just so they're not, when everything feels quite chaotic and the world is chaotic at the moment, you can just come back to that and just check in with your unique way of working and how you want to feel, and just break it down. Like, 3 MITs is not much. Like, don't have a huge to-do list, because it's just overwhelming. Just what are those 3 main things, and then book in those pleasure non-negotiables and make them happen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. It feels much more spacious.
Yeah.
And like, it's providing a strong foundation to build your worth and build your success. Like, it's helping you go in, move forwards in, like, this really gentle but really aligned and intuitive way, rather than, it's working with you, not against you.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. I think that's really cool. Thank you. Okay. Right. Well, before we come to the end of this episode, I just love to ask my guests just 3 little questions about themselves and their cycle, particularly because, I'm all about working in this seasonal, cyclical approach. And I know that you are too. So just would love to know, is there a favorite season or phase of your cycle, or the outer seasons?
My favorite. I feel like they go so quickly, the cycle. Even my husband will be like, oh my God, you got your period again? And I'm like, it's like 28 days, like 20 to 38 days. Like, this is what happens. I don't know. I think I enjoy that tail end of the autumn season, because I feel like I'm just walking around the streets doing my thing. So many things are dropping in, like, around my work, and just, like, all these, like, feels like epiphanies almost. I'm like, oh, this feels really good. So I really, at the moment, I really like that tail end of autumn.
I love that so much. That's that definitely doesn't happen for me at that time. That happens at a different time for me. So awesome. And then you kind of alluded earlier on, but your least favorite or most challenging part of your cycle, when would that be?
And as you know, the more you look after yourself in your winter, the better your period will be the next time in the whole cycle. So if I haven't looked after myself and I feel unwell in my winter, that's not good. But I have a challenging time dancing lightly from winter to spring, because I can be like, okay, back on, like, go for it. And it can make me feel quite down, because obviously my body is not where my head is. So I've really got to work on that, because otherwise it could be like, spring can be a drudge if I don't dance lightly out of winter.
Yeah. I hear this so many times. I think it's a real thing for, I feel like, I don't know what the common thread is, whether it's a time of life or whether it's just, existing in this world and this culture that we live in. But this transition out of winter, this slowness, and like you say, the spring being that time, like, where energy's rising, and it's like, okay, well, I'm getting back into it now. Like, I want to kind of, start going again. But, like, you can go way too fast and, burn out. And then, like you say, it affects the whole rest of your cycle.
Yes.
And I just hear it over and over and over that this particular transition, it's so important for us to shine a light on the importance of going slowly and and remembering it's like a marathon, not a sprint almost.
Yes.
So I love that you said that. Yeah.
And that's good to know. It's not just me.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And my last question to you is, what's one thing that connecting with your body and cycle has taught you? Like, if you could just pick one thing.
Oh, the permission to rest, and that it is okay to rest. This was like the revelation when I first came across cycle work, that when my friend and the menstrual mentor said this, it was the biggest relief in the world. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I am meant to rest. I am allowed to rest. It is okay, just the permission to rest. And then knowing that from this winter, from the rest and the restoration, things will grow. Like, that's been a revelation, absolute revelation. Very simple, but very powerful.
Very simple, but completely eroded from our, the way we're raised, the way we're taught, what we keep being imprinted with, like,
exactly.
The messaging. So thank you so much. Thank you. I've just had such a beautiful conversation with you. I've really, really loved chatting, Ainslie. Thank you so much for being here.
My absolute pleasure.
And if anyone wanted to connect with you, they can find you. I've got your details. I'll share them in the show notes. But your website's starting with a.com.
Yes.
And on Instagram at Ainslie Young.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be right? Anywhere else to add?
No, they're the places that you can find me.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, have a lovely day. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks so much, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.